Welcome back to the Sad Crime Channel. Today we travel to Machesney Park in Illinois, approximately 100 miles away from Chicago. It was in this city where the events I'll tell you about today unfolded, a case concerning the disappearance of 30-year-old Katrina Smith. Katrina Smith was a resident of the picturesque Machesney Park in Illinois. She worked as a human resources coordinator at Cameron Industries, a local automotive plant. At the time, she had been married to 44-year-old Todd Smith for about 7 years. On October 23, 2012, Katrina's husband began to worry when her boss called him. The boss asked what had happened since Katrina hadn't shown up for work that day without notifying anyone, a behavior very unusual for her. She wasn't answering her phone either, which alarmed her co-workers, who feared something bad might have happened. Todd appeared just as surprised by this news as Katrina's colleagues. He explained that she had been excited about a job interview scheduled that day, but when it was revealed that she had failed to show up for the interview as well, his concern deepened. Todd told authorities that he had last seen Katrina the previous evening when she left the house around 9 p.m. Unsure of what to do, Todd called Katrina's sister, Miranda, to share what had happened. He explained there was no contact with Katrina, and he feared she'd gone missing. Miranda immediately sensed something was wrong. While she hoped her sister would turn up during the day, an underlying fear persisted that something serious might have happened. Katrina's absence was also unsettling to Paige, Todd's eldest daughter from his previous marriage. Paige recalls that when her father called to tell her there had been no contact with Katrina for some time and he didn't know where she was, her first instinct was to rationalize the situation. Maybe Katrina had been delayed or her phone had died. However, knowing Katrina well, Paige also recognized that she wasn't the kind of person to disappear without a word, leave, or fail to inform anyone. This was simply out of character. Todd, too, knew such behavior was unusual for his wife. After calling family, friends, and acquaintances near and far without any success, he decided to report Katrina's disappearance to the police. When officers questioned Todd about the last time he had seen his wife, he stated that it was the previous evening. He explained that they had recently returned from a romantic getaway to Washington, D.C. to celebrate their 7th wedding anniversary. The trip had been a happy occasion, and their return seemed ordinary. That evening, Katrina had done some laundry and then used Todd's computer to finalize details for her job interview the next day. It was a significant career opportunity, one she had been eagerly anticipating. Katrina had even exchanged a few emails with her prospective employer to confirm the arrangements for the meeting. After finishing her preparations, Katrina left the house around 9 p.m. She told Todd she was heading to a friend's apartment in Roscoe, where she had been house-sitting during the friend's absence. The next morning, Todd sent Katrina a supportive text message that read, "Good luck at your interview. You'll do great." He never received a response. When the police asked Todd whether he and Katrina had argued the previous evening, he firmly denied it, stating that everything had been perfectly fine. He described their relationship as a loving one and reiterated that there had been no conflict. The police began a full-scale search for Katrina Smith. Missing person posters with her photograph were distributed, and the search effort quickly gained momentum. Friends, acquaintances, and many local residents volunteered to help. Todd himself actively participated in the search for his wife. A candlelight vigil was organized, where prayers were said for Katrina's safe return. Her family also created a Facebook page titled Find Katrina Smith to gather support and share updates about the search. 24 hours after Katrina was reported missing, her car, a Chevrolet Cruze, was found abandoned on the side of a road about 2 miles from her home. The vehicle was towed and handed over to forensic technicians for analysis. Police immediately noticed that the car had been thoroughly cleaned, raising suspicions. 2 days later, near the area where Katrina's car was found, searchers discovered her purse, her phone, and paper towels stained with blood. These grim discoveries heightened the concern of investigators. They began to suspect that this was no longer a case of a simple disappearance, but potentially something far more sinister. The evidence left a chilling impression, and the police feared they were dealing with the worst possible outcome. A devastated Todd appeared on television, speaking with a breaking voice as he pleaded for his wife's safe return. "I just want my wife to come home," he said. From the moment Katrina disappeared, Todd maintained daily contact with the media. He believed that by keeping her story in the public eye, he could increase the chances of finding her alive and well. Katrina's sister Miranda also shared an emotional post on Facebook, writing, "Sissy, there are no words to express how much we love you. We miss you terribly, and the pain is unbearable." Meanwhile, police speculated about what might have happened to Katrina. They considered various scenarios. Could someone have been stalking her? Was there a connection to the church community she attended? These theories led investigators down several paths. One promising lead involved a young man from their church who had been arrested 2 years earlier in the Smiths neighborhood for peeping on neighbors. Police wondered if he had targeted Katrina specifically. However, this lead quickly fell apart after further investigation. Despite this, it later emerged that Katrina had voiced concerns about being followed or watched. In the weeks leading up to her disappearance, she confided in co-workers that she felt someone might be stalking her. Colleagues also informed police about a strange incident that occurred 2 weeks before Katrina vanished. Someone threw flyers out of a car window in the parking lot at her workplace. These flyers contained offensive accusations, alleging that Katrina was having an affair with a man named Guy. The perpetrator was never identified, as the individual was well disguised, and the vehicle captured on surveillance footage lacked license plates. This incident, combined with her growing fear of being watched, left Katrina deeply shaken. She became so distressed that she began contemplating acquiring a firearm for self-defense. Katrina even asked her stepfather, Bruce, about the process of obtaining a gun permit in Illinois and whether she could practice shooting at a range without one. The fear Katrina experienced was unsettling, but it was only the beginning of a far darker story. As previously feared by the police, the most tragic scenario became a reality. On November 9th, 2012, 17 days after Todd Smith reported his wife missing, Katrina's body was discovered in the Rock River. A firefighter who had gone fishing after work stumbled upon her remains. Her body was in an advanced state of decomposition, making visual identification impossible. Authorities relied on dental records to confirm her identity. An autopsy revealed that Katrina had died from blunt force trauma to the head, inflicted by a heavy object. Additionally, her body was covered in multiple bruises, indicating that she had been severely beaten before her death. The case of Katrina's disappearance officially turned into a homicide investigation, and, as is often the case in such situations, the police's suspicion quickly centered on her husband. Todd Smith became their primary person of interest, prompting authorities to scrutinize his behavior more closely. At first glance, Todd appeared to be a grieving husband. From the day Katrina went missing, he made daily appearances in the media, crying, lamenting, and expressing hope that his beloved wife would return home. However, investigators noted inconsistencies in his emotional displays. Despite his apparent sobbing, he never shed actual tears, and his grief seemed rehearsed. While this wasn't immediately obvious, closer observation raised doubts among law enforcement. Additionally, while Todd joined search efforts for Katrina alongside friends and volunteers, his involvement appeared superficial. Observers felt he lacked genuine interest in the search, further fueling suspicions. As investigators dug deeper into Todd's background, they uncovered troubling details. At 44 years old, Todd was an insurance and investment broker who, at first glance, seemed financially successful. In truth, the reality was quite the opposite. Todd was embroiled in a legal battle over allegations of fraud. He and his business partner had been accused of defrauding clients of $983,000. This revelation shattered his image as a prosperous businessman and added another layer of suspicion. But that wasn't the end of the revelations about Todd Smith's past. His history turned out to be quite shocking, in the worst sense of the word. Investigators discovered that Todd Smith wasn't always Todd Smith. In the past, he went by the name Todd Raprager. In 1985, when Todd was just 17 years old, a dispute with his mother took a sinister turn. In an act of revenge, he caused a gas explosion that set their family home ablaze, while his mother, stepfather, and 3 step-siblings were still inside. Miraculously, everyone managed to escape the burning house unharmed. Meanwhile, Todd stood outside, watching the scene unfold. He later admitted that he felt this was the only way to settle things with his mother. For his actions, Todd was sentenced to 30 months of probation and required to complete 160 hours of community service. After this ordeal, he left home and never returned. 3 years later, he met a woman named Teresa, whom he married. The couple had 3 daughters, and initially, their life seemed to be on the right track. Todd even changed his last name to Smith, a symbolic gesture to leave his troubled past behind and start afresh. However, over time, the marriage faced severe difficulties, particularly financial ones. Todd struggled to provide stability, leaving Teresa to carry the burden alone. She worked 2 jobs while also managing the household and caring for their children. The strain proved too much. The family eventually had to sell their home to pay off debts, a move that marked the breaking point for Teresa. Feeling abandoned and unsupported, she filed for divorce. Once the divorce was finalized and Teresa began hoping for a more stable life, tragedy struck again. She became the victim of an assault. One evening, Teresa pulled up to her parents' house. As she stepped out of her car, she was suddenly attacked by a man wearing a werewolf mask. The assailant shoved her, and when she fell to the ground, he began punching and kicking her relentlessly. Teresa was convinced he intended to kill her. The thought of her mother finding her lifeless body on the driveway the next morning gave her the strength to fight back. She managed to push the man off and escape. When the police arrived, they asked Teresa if she knew who the attacker was. Without hesitation, she replied, "It was my ex-husband." Todd, of course, denied the accusation, claiming that he was at home at the time of the assault. The police tried to gather evidence, taking samples from under Teresa's fingernails and comparing them to fibers from Todd's jacket. However, the results were inconclusive. There was also blood under Teresa's fingernails, and detectives wanted to test it for DNA and compare it to Todd's. But Todd refused to cooperate. Lacking sufficient evidence or grounds for a search warrant to obtain Todd's DNA, the case was closed. That might have been the end of it, until now. With the murder of his second wife, Katrina, Todd was once again in the spotlight as the prime suspect. The previous allegations against him, along with the unresolved assault on Teresa, painted a deeply troubling picture. Detectives began to trust their instincts about Todd Smith even more, convinced there was much more beneath the surface. What's more, it turned out that Todd's marriage to Katrina was far from the idyllic picture he had tried to present. Behind the facade, the couple was struggling with significant problems so severe that Katrina had been considering ending the marriage. In the purse found near Katrina's abandoned car, police discovered notes concerning a meeting with a divorce attorney. This strongly indicated that the couple's future was precarious. Todd failed to mention any of this to the police. He was well aware that things were not going well. Katrina was growing increasingly distant from him, and he suspected she was having an affair. Indeed, Katrina Smith had been involved with another man, Guy Gabriel, for some time. These flyers that had been scattered around the parking lot accused Katrina of having an affair with a man named Guy. It turned out that those accusations were true. Katrina and Guy had met at work, and their relationship started as an affair, but quickly grew more serious. Katrina saw a future with Guy and planned to leave Todd. She confided in her lover that she was unhappy in her marriage.
Just that she was frustrated that he was grasping at straws and trying to talk her into staying. Her apprehension to share, and the reason she wouldn't share is because she was afraid of his reaction.
Horrible. I just wanted to come home.
Initially, the police were also suspicious of Guy Gabriel, which was understandable given the circumstances. Their suspicions deepened when they examined Katrina's phone and found a significant number of messages from Guy sent on the night she disappeared. The tone of these messages raised some concerns for the investigators. They noted that Guy seemed frustrated and even slightly aggressive. He repeatedly asked whether Katrina had finally told Todd about the divorce and pressured her to come clean about their relationship and her desire to leave Todd for good. The nature of these messages, which pressured and coerced Katrina into taking specific actions, was a red flag for the police, prompting them to look more closely at Guy. It turned out that he was not a man with a spotless past. On the contrary, he had been accused of domestic violence and assaulting his wife. This raised serious concerns about him, and it's no surprise that after discovering these revelations, the authorities suspected Guy of the worst. However, after a thorough investigation, it was confirmed that Guy Gabriel had an alibi. On the night Katrina went missing, he was at work, which was verified to be true. Moreover, he cooperated fully with the police. The list of suspects in Katrina Smith's murder was therefore narrowed down to one person: her husband. As I mentioned earlier, Todd knew about Katrina's affair with Guy and had concealed this fact from the police. In Katrina's car, a desperate letter was found, handwritten by Todd, in which he begged his wife not to leave him and assured her of his undying love. After the letter was analysed by a specialist, it was determined that phrases like, "I'm terrified that you might leave me," and "I'll do whatever it takes," pointed to a subtle, hidden threat. Additionally, it was revealed that Katrina hadn't been staying at home, not because she was house-sitting for a friend, but because she had already moved out of Todd's home 2.5 weeks before her death. On October 30th, 2012, police obtained a search warrant for Todd Smith's home, where they seized various items, including his laptop. In the garage, they discovered a baseball bat with dark red stains, which were confirmed through laboratory testing to be blood matching Katrina Smith's DNA. The investigation into Todd's computer uncovered 3 significant folders. One was linked to an incident involving flyers that had been distributed at Katrina's workplace, accusing her of an affair. Another folder was labelled Super Track Stick, referring to a GPS tracking device that Todd had been using for 3 years to monitor Katrina's movements. After searching Katrina's car, investigators found a wire under the vehicle, suggesting a tracking device had once been attached. A chemical called luminol was used to detect blood, revealing traces of Katrina's blood throughout the car. However, there were no fingerprints or blood from Todd. As the investigation progressed, detectives found that Todd had been stalking his wife, and the physical evidence increasingly pointed to him as the primary suspect. The blood samples found in Katrina's car were confirmed to be hers, but no traces of Todd's DNA or fingerprints were discovered in the vehicle. Meanwhile, police obtained footage from a neighbour's security camera, which showed someone walking across the street on the night of Katrina's murder. The person's identity could not be confirmed due to the darkness and distance. Despite their suspicion of Todd's involvement, the police lacked concrete evidence to link him to the crime. They decided to re-examine the evidence, obtained a new warrant to search Todd's computer, and focused on the data from the GPS tracking device, Super Track Stick. They discovered that on the night of Katrina's murder, the GPS device had been moved from her car to a person, likely Todd, as the device tracked a movement consistent with walking rather than driving. The GPS data also showed the path leading from Katrina's abandoned car to Todd's home. This was corroborated by the video footage from the neighbour's camera, which showed someone walking in the same direction, providing a strong connection between Todd and the crime. The GPS movement aligned with the person seen on the neighbour's camera. Detectives were confident that Todd Smith, after killing his wife and dumping her body in the river, had disconnected the GPS from Katrina's car and hidden it in his pocket. He simply forgot to turn it off, or perhaps he thought he had, but the device continued recording his movements. It tracked his entire journey on foot from where he abandoned the car to his home. Todd Smith was arrested on charges of murdering his wife. He denied the accusations. During the trial, Guy Gabriel testified, stating that Katrina was frustrated with Todd's attempts to control her and keep her with him. She had been afraid to tell him about the divorce, fearing his reaction. The defence argued that Todd was innocent, claiming that there were no fingerprints or DNA of his found on the murder weapon or in Katrina's car. They suggested Guy Gabriel might be the real killer, despite his solid alibi. The jury had no doubts about Todd's guilt. The judge stated, "The facts are clear. Todd Smith, you killed your wife. You struck her on the head with a blunt object and threw her into the river like a plastic bag. I am at a loss for words regarding your actions." The trial, filled with suspense and drama, culminated on January 25, 2017. The jury delivered their verdict: guilty. Todd Smith was found guilty of first-degree murder on April 4, 2017, and sentenced to 59 years of incarceration by the courts. Although his attempts at appealing were denied by them, this sentence remains unchanged, and appeals are declined by them. In memory of Katrina, her family founded the Sisyphus Footprints Foundation, which supports families after the loss of loved ones, especially those who die under tragic circumstances. Paige stated that after the verdict, she spoke to her father over the phone, asking him to tell her the truth about what happened. Todd refused, saying he planned to appeal. Frustrated, Paige told him she would stop communicating with him unless he was honest. Reportedly, that was the last conversation between Paige and her father. This tragic case serves as a sobering reminder of how control, manipulation, and unchecked anger can lead to devastating consequences. Despite his conviction and the strong evidence against him, Todd Smith has never confessed, leaving lingering questions for those closest to Katrina.
We are so grateful to the verdict today. We finally have justice for my daughter, Katrina.
That's the end of this story. Thank you for listening all the way through. If you like what I do, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next episode. Thank you in advance, and see you next time. Goodbye.